In this episode, Darrell and I discuss why you should try selling your business before announcing to the world that you're giving up. And if you don't know who we are, Darrell and I were co-founders of a business called RealBase, which we recently sold for 180 million. I was CTO and Darrell was head of product. Let's jump into today's episode. All right, here we go again. How are you going, mate?
Good.
Excellent. So this one prompted me, and it's the only reason it did is because I've seen it a few times now. The first time I kind of let it slide, but the next couple of times I was like, come on, guys, what's going on? So what am I talking about? I am talking about try selling your company before quitting. I've seen this on X far too many times from indies, and they basically just go on X, type, I'm done with this company. I hate it. I'm finished and bored. Hey, who wants to buy it? What do you reckon I can get for it? Now, I think this is
$5.
absolutely...
I'll give you $5.
Yeah, here's a pro tip. Pro tip. Take some notes. Don't announce you're shutting down your Apple service before trying to sell to someone. You've just lost all of your bargaining power. And in a negotiation, you need to have some bargaining power. Otherwise, you're going to get nothing. So, yeah, the last one, I couldn't let it go. I literally just had to tweet it back and just say, hey, guys, like, don't do this. You're being silly. You're not going to get anything. Sorry?
Stop that.
Stop that. Just
stop doing this. Yeah.
If you've done something of value, just bloody try sell it first. Don't just throw it out. Like even your domain name. Like if you built up a good enough domain reputation in the time that you had your business, that's going to be worth something. Some of your code's going to be worth something. You know, you've done some work. You could probably get a couple of bucks for it. Don't just say you're quitting, because as soon as you said you're quitting, people first are going to go like, no one wants something that no one else wants. I don't know how to articulate that better, but you know what I mean? Like no one wants someone else's rubbish realistically, or people want things that other people want as well. Right?
Yeah. I think it's important to remember for them, like what's probably happening is they're trying to sell it. No one's buying it, or they're getting low traction and they're starting to, it feeds into your own mental cycle of like, I'm not worth anything. I'm useless, whatever. Just because you haven't been able to find the market for it doesn't mean it's not a perfect add-on strategic benefit to someone with an existing market or another product, and they might want it for a fair bit of money, like way more than you think. Because like if you're looking at the strategic benefit of plugging something into someone who already has 1,000 customers versus you who can't find 5 customers, that could still be massively worth it. But if you first say, I am too tired to continue, or I desperately need money, yeah, like you're going to get some money, but it's going to be fire sale money. It's not going to be any decent amount of money. And yes, it's going to be hard to price it at what it's actually worth for that person. But if you just float it out there, like I'm considering moving to another project versus I'm tired and I want out, please help me.
Exactly. I'm just thinking of kind of a similar situation that we did or we faced. We tried to sell. We didn't obviously never say that we're quitting, because that's just silly, like I've said. But we went out and tried to find a buyer for our business manually, like personally. Like we sent Frank out to go and have a look, and check out the neighborhood, and came back with absolutely nothing. Now that's very demotivating. But guess what? We're just looking in the wrong place. So what we ended up doing was actually getting a consultant. Is it a consultant or a expert in selling business? A what? A broker.
A broker.
That's it, the word broker. A proper broker, not a internet broker, but an actual broker who takes a percentage of the sale. But then they were able to get a much bigger valuation, and they knew the people. So these are the kind of things you want to consider before even saying you're quitting. Because as soon as you say that, it's done. It's a damaged good. It's like, I don't want damaged goods. I don't want something that you don't even care about. Because even when selling something, you still have to be there to hand it over. You have to be there to help. If you lost all motivation, why am I going to give you any sort of money? Because you're going to just say, I'm over it. I don't even care. You want someone who's passionate, who's actually able to stay in on, like preferably in the business, right? Like especially if you're buying a going concern, you want to grow as an investor. You want to actually see that this thing can, you're going to get a return on investment. And when you say, I'm quitting, I'm done, I'm tired, I'm blah, 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 whatever it is. And those are all fair things, right? Like we've all been there. We've all been tired. We've all been demotivated and stuff. And like, that's fair. It's a perfect thing. You don't have to publicly say that. I think especially when trying to sell. Like, it's fine to do
Yeah.
it while you're working on the business, but you still show up every day and just keep grinding. Like, complain and play on.
Yeah.
Look, I'm I'm all for that. I don't care. It's a good way of venting, as long as you show up and still work hard and don't just give up. Because I mean, look, all these topics that we always talk about, everything always turns into the same kind of thread, right? It's like every day, work on one thing, show up,
do the work.
show up, and do the work. It sucks some
First thing I'm
days.
thinking is there a business sale broker for indie hackers? If there's not, someone who's listening to this should probably start that as not like a marketplace directory. We don't need more directories. An actual broker like what we had for our sale, who he was a specialist in real estate software acquisitions. Someone who's just that. It might be like, maybe it's like MicroSAS or Niche Launch or something. They already do it. But brokers for that is probably a really good thing, because they're going to, like, the things that I would tell someone to do if they were looking to sell is write down probably the three reasons you started that product in that market, and then say, these are the things this product is doing or can do with XYZ. Does anyone want to buy it? It has this many customers. It doesn't actually, like, don't get demotivated by the fact it doesn't have customers, because you've probably put a lot of work into something that someone with a little bit of extra capital might just be looking to pick something up and run with it. They might have a very different idea of where it should be, but if you want out anyway, does it matter? Like, they might take it into a completely different direction, but it's just a good leg up. Just talk about the things that you designed it to do, talk about the challenges that you faced, and then throw it out there. Somewhat, like, even if you want 100 grand for it, put it out there for 200, rather than saying, I really want to sell this thing, I'm sick of it, can I have 100 grand? Because you're going to get 20. You're not going to get more than 100. And if you can find a broker, if they do exist, I would highly recommend that, because it takes the emotional component out. It takes your own limiting beliefs out of the equation too.
Perfect. Yeah, that's really true. Because, we would never have thought in 100 years we'd get the number that we got. I would have said, you're absolutely joking. There's no way. Yep. But it's just because we just didn't have, like, we hadn't sold businesses before and we didn't know what they were worth. But I think it's key to remember, especially as an engineer, and especially if you come from a business where you were a senior or something, you were earning at least 100, like, I don't know where, depending on where you're, if you're in Australia, you're earning 140K plus. You should, if you've worked on a project for a whole year, like, you should be at minimum expecting that value, right? Because if you put in that much effort, if someone was to employ you to do the same thing, one, probably wouldn't get exactly the same output, because it's your own thing. You're going to be pumping that in the weekends and everything. So you should be looking for, because I've seen on Twitter and stuff, people selling projects for like 5 grand, 10 grand. I'm like, how long have you been working on that? 6 months. It's like, dude, that's ridiculous. Like, if it's a project that's actually worth something, like, it actually does something. And I guess you can talk about, like, why you should build for businesses, like B2B, try and solve a business problem, because then that's something a business could require. It's like,
that's probably a good lens to look at it if you haven't started yet. Before you get a year down the track and you're tired, think from the very beginning, who could I sell this to as like an add-on to existing products? And if that would just be a good way of making sure you've got the safety net of, worst case scenario, I ship it to people in this category as an attachment to their product. Well, that's still going to be a pretty good result.
Yeah, because I actually saw there's a company in Europe somewhere, I think, and they just they bought up a few, and everyone always says, like, good night to the app. But anyway, they buy up a whole bunch of random tools, and then they just create a whole suite of them, right? Yep. So that's like a good thing, like, especially if you are building very unique tools that are, do one thing, it is a good idea to go and find those, and like, a broker would be awesome, like someone that actually works with those companies and it's like, hey, look, this is X and they buy this. Like, look at Canva, all the stuff they're buying up right now. So they just bought that AI startup that just creates images and videos in Australia. So they just purchase them. So if you look at like things like, hey, this service would be really good inside of X business, like that's a good way to approach a business to start. It's like, man, if they had this tool, that would be really handy. And then you talk to brokers and people like that. And again, this is why it's so important to work on one thing and commit to that one thing, because you're going to spend the time and people are going to know you for that one thing, rather than just keep flipping your businesses for making 1 or 2 grand or nothing. every time. If you have a bigger business, because bigger business wants to buy solid businesses that have been around. They don't want to buy little things they can spool up themselves in a week or two, right? Anyone can do that. If you spend 2
Yeah.
years, polishing something, you got a much bigger chance of actually selling that thing.
All right. So I'm a tired startup creator. What do I do before I get to the point that I publicly post that I'm tired and abandoning the project?
Probably never, to be honest. I would say that you're never abandoning unless you. So the only way I can see that you actually do that is if you've emailed all your customers and say, sorry, I'm shutting down the service, and you want to publicly announce that, but you're not selling. I don't think there's a world where you say I'm quitting and selling. That doesn't happen in the best outcome. You're never getting the best outcome doing that. So I would never recommend that. I would say you're being silly.
So before you get to the point that you do the public announcement, email all your customers, tell them that the price is going up. You're going to ask them a survey. How annoyed or sad would you be if the product went away? How much would you pay to keep it going? What else could you do? I would say probably just asking the customers, getting a bit of motivation from the customers is probably the best way to push through that, because then you can find out what other tools they're using. That can tell you who you could potentially sell the attachment to. You can ask them how disappointed they'd be if it went away. That's going to give you a bit of value when you try and ship it out to a broker. You say 90% of my customers said they'd be devastated if it went away and they'd pay a bit more money, but I don't have the time to go and do the effort of increasing costs and churn and everything, all of those like little admin things. Do you want to take it from here?
I think, what's actually also, like, you've touched on that there, and it's actually quite a good one, is why are you quitting? Like, ask yourself that question. What's making you quit? Is it you're demotivated because you don't have users? Maybe it's time to pivot. Maybe it's time to actually talk to the users and find out what they would use, right? So there's a pivot there. If the product's there's no product market fit, that's a reason for quitting, but there's also a reason for pivoting. Now, I'm not making enough money. Okay, cool. Let's put up the prices and see what happens. Double the price, see what happens. What's your fall off there? Well, how many signups? What happens to signups? What's your churn? Like, what if you doubled your prices?
All of the potential answers to why you're thinking of quitting are probably related to fear, where it's like, I don't want to put the prices up in case I lose customers. Great, you're about to chuck it in the bin anyway. Or I don't want to pivot because I might lose customers. Or I don't know if this will work. Or I don't want to hire someone to do marketing because it'll cost me money and I'm scared of talking to people. Like, all of these things are like, if you don't do them and you just throw the business away, it's gone anyway.
Exactly. And another reason, like, I would say that you could want to quit as well, is I'm tired. I'm burnt out. Guess what? Take some time off. Drop your hours. Yeah. Guess what? Your product's still going to be around. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. If you just drop from, if you're doing 60 hours, drop to 20 hours and see what happens. See how it feels. Get outside, touch some grass. You know what to say. Just live a little and see what happens. And that's, I guess, sometimes it's a money thing. It's like people are like, I have to go back to my job because I quit my job to start this. Okay, cool. Do it in your spare time. Do it in your other 40 hours that you have extra in the week. See how that goes. Play around. Like, oh, I want to see my mates. Cool. That's fine. You're allowed to do that. Just know that if you're giving and taking. So you're taking away from your business and you're giving to your social life. And that's 100% fine if that's what you want to do. But play with those parameters. Find out what the reason is and then see if you can fix the reason or find the solution to the problem, because that's what we are, right? We're entrepreneurs. We like solving problems. And this is just another problem. It's like, I'm quitting. Why am I quitting? I had to ask this myself many times, right? 8 years is a long time to do working on the same thing in an industry that's quite challenging. And you have to say, why am I doing this? Why? What's the reason? What do I enjoy? What do I want? Like, for me, I found, what is the things that I enjoy the most? I enjoy complex problems. Cool. So I'm going to focus on that. And that's going to give me purpose and fun in my job. And then I'm going to have like, look, this certain thing burns me out. Cool. I'm going to set up a team that helps me do that thing so that I don't get burnt out doing that. So there's lots of things and lots of reasons why people quit. And I think if you can find out your reason, you can then address the problem and actually move on from there.
Yeah. And if you get to the point that you've tried all of that and nothing's working, then it's all about the framing. instead of saying I'm tired and exhausted and I want to abandon this thing forever. You can very safely frame something as I'm prioritizing my family and I'd like to sell this asset. Who would be interested? Do a bit of research. Don't just pump it out on Twitter. Actually go and look at the sort of the market that could potentially be sold to and start actually contacting people. Worst case, what you might find is no one wants to buy it, but someone says if it could do these things, I would probably buy it. And then maybe you work on it a bit more and you sell it for more money.
Exactly right. I like it. That's the solution. So don't quit and then try and
Don't
sell.
despair. Good luck out there. Keep your head up.
Can you make it? All right, guys.
Everyone's going to make it. We're all going to make it.
Catch you on the next one.